So we're here with Kevin Hardy, and Kevin works in the Vancouver market with his business partner, Will Nikita. The two of them have been working together for 15 years now, which is Kevin's run so far in the business, and Will has been in the business for roughly 40 years or so. So Kevin, there were a couple of things we wanted to sort of learn and talk to you about. First of all, happy birthday to you.
Thank you. I decided to put on my nicest t-shirt I brought on vacation, so I hope this comes across as vaguely professional.
We needn't judge you based on your garb, so no problem. More interested in what it is you have to say and share about what's happening in the market over there. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the market in Vancouver?
Sure. Definitely. Maybe like a quick recap of COVID 2020 to now, because it seems like before then was like the before years that no one seems to talk about.
For sure.
Definitely what's been interesting in our conversation was that the mirroring of the two of our cities, which I would say attract people for a very different reason and they do have different buyer patterns for that reason. But what was interesting in our conversations, we were experiencing a very similar distribution of wealth and where that money was going. So basically, for the first 3 months of lockdown, everything froze, And then coming out of that in like June of 2020, the detached entry-level market around 1.7, 1.8 to be on the east side of Vancouver, that started to explode because people who were in one-bedroom condos needed to get out, but they couldn't necessarily afford it. So they needed a place with a suite to help offset the cost of buying the house. That exploded, and then it was just a trickle-on effect, which just kept going and going and going. And we've had a very, very bull market here for the last about 18 months. And we have now entered into definitely a transitional market of things cooling off. Part of that due to the Bank of Canada raising their interest rates. But now where we're seeing on good price, well-priced properties, we're seeing, let's say, 2 offers or 3 offers on a property that at its height was getting 10 to 15 offers. So I'd say we're still in a very good market. It's just not the level of insanity that it was. And I think that it's an absolute blessing that this has occurred, because it could not keep going. It needed to cool off.
Yeah, absolutely can agree with you on that one. We had some of that same similar level of craziness, and we were experiencing 15 plus. I mean, I was on offers where there were 40 competing offers in some instances. Yeah. And like it was almost unbelievable, but that was what was happening. And it's definitely been very interesting to see things taking a break there, where now we're sometimes missing offer dates or having 2 to 3 people max kind of coming through. But that is a positive from where it was.
And would you say, similar to Vancouver, the downtown core didn't really get to benefit from that like robust explosion of activity? So I actually think almost the safest bet in terms of like where we're going to see the bet of like what is going to have the most amount of retraction. I think the safest property is probably in downtown condos, simply because it didn't explode 20, 30, 40, or 100% over the past 24 months, like some of the surrounding areas.
Yeah, our housing market went bonkers, like truly so, but condos did remain relatively flat.
They kept up within like 6, 7.
That's it. That's right.
Yeah.
But the price points of houses, I would say, all just went crazy. And it made sense. I mean, of course, we all understand what and why that happened, but definitely that, I think, is starting to come down from what was extremely robust and heated market, as you said, bull market, and now things are definitely taking a step back, which we're welcoming with open arms.
We're already seeing in these areas that are 45 minutes outside of downtown Vancouver or an hour outside of Vancouver, which is a very long commuting time by comparison to Torontarians. Like Vancouverites, if it's over a half hour, that may as well be in a different province. So
Mm.
these areas are like houses that are 1.8 to 2 million are already seeing 20 to 30% retraction in what they expected the price to be. So
Yes.
that
Yeah.
we're already seeing that, and that already only happened in the last like 4 weeks.
That's just about right. The last 3 to 4 weeks, I think we've definitely felt that impact. I also tend to feel that a lot of the stats that they talk about when it's, major city centers are including the outskirts, but really it's the outskirts that drove prices up exponentially during the pandemic. We saw a lot of that already take a step back, whereas the city center, I think, is going to relatively flatten from where it was, and I don't think it's going to have the sort of peaks and troughs, right?
It's actually a very good buy right now, like properties, and especially here in Vancouver, the sort of luxury market north of 4 million for a condo. I mean, obviously it's still luxurious between like 1.5 and 4, but I'm saying, well over luxury markets at 4 million, they're actually a good buy in terms of there's almost no competition, and people who had homes in like over in Victoria, for instance, that still doubled in the last 2 years. Not everyone, but a lot of homes did experience that. Can in fact sell their home net most of 90% of their peak profit, and take that money and buy a luxurious condo on the waterfront in Vancouver. And the price fluctuation is like, maybe they're paying 8% more than they would have 2 years ago, but they got 80 or 90 or 100% more than they would have 2 years ago on their property elsewhere. So I think it's actually going to be very interesting, and maybe people start returning to the downtown core, and they've already started doing that. It's definitely been a much better year than it has been the last 3.
Yeah, this return to work, I think policy is starting to come into place as the pandemic starts to ease, at least in terms of restrictions and lifestyle.
Totally.
Those are similarities. There's an interesting difference. In Vancouver, you guys have a vacancy tax that's been talked about being implemented here, and I don't think that we have the same vacancy rate. But I was thinking that maybe you could speak to that a little bit and share that with us.
Definitely. The vacancy tax came into place after the foreign buyers tax came in. I don't know for sure, but I think Vancouver or BC was the first province to introduce the foreign buyers tax. I think it was in 2018, could have been 2017.
Yeah.
And when it came in, it was 15%, which was aggressive enough to stop an investor from buying. And then it was increased to 20%. So that was like phase 1 of trying to get foreign investment to stop parking money here, like a bank account. And that did a really good job of basically slamming the market to a stop. Again, over 1.5 million. Didn't really have any effect under 1 million, but over 1.5. And everyone thought the market was going to crash. And in certain sections, certain areas, it did.
Mm-hmm.
But I think after 6 months, the pent-up demand of people waiting for the crash, and that it didn't happen. Again, not all markets are the same, but I'm saying generally speaking, there was this massive 6-month-long backlog of buyers waiting to move. Because in that 6 months, people got married, people died, people got divorced, people moved in with their family. All these things kept happening. And then the market exploded again. So, by trying to tamper the market with this foreign buyers tax, it had the opposite effect in 1 year. The only thing that was not true of is some detached housing markets over 4 million. Those took a big hit, as did luxury condos. So then phase 2 of that was the vacancy tax. Now we have 2 vacancy taxes. One is from the city of Vancouver. So if your condo is located within that jurisdiction of the city of Vancouver, so downtown, and it'll just keep it easier for this conversation if we say that. That came into effect. And I think it started at 2% of your assessed value annually. Then it rose to 3%. And then this past year, they moved it to 5%.
Wow.
And then on top of that, there's the vacancy tax from BC. So I think, and again, I can't apologize. Do not take tax advice from me. But I'm fairly certain it is 2% for foreign owners or people who do not have their permanent residency status, and it's 1% for people who live outside of BC. So people from, let's say, Alberta or Ontario, have homes here, and then it's 0.5% for people who are British Columbians. Now that seems to change every year, so I'm sorry if that is wrong, but that was the. So now, if let's say we just worked with another client who was from Seattle, they had a home here. It was a multi-million-dollar condo. And it was we just sold it for around $5.5 million. But they would have been on the hook for 7%, and their assessment is around $6 million. So their holding costs for a vacation home went from just their property taxes of 50 grand a year to nearly 300 grand.
Wow.
The vacation condo. So
they were motivated to move that.
Yeah. I think, there's no doubt foreign investment drove up prices here. There's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, it's also a very small geographical area. It's also a very highly desirable area to live. And it's beautiful. And low interest rates, there's a lot of driving factors to why it's expensive to live in Vancouver, outside of just foreign ownership. Foreign ownership, I think they looked through the property transfers of last year as to how many, or 2 years, of how many people actually paid the foreign buyer's tax. And I think it was under 2% of transactions actually paid the foreign buyer's tax. So that's two things. It's either the foreign money is already here, because those foreign investors brought their money here and bought like a giant home and sold it. And so that it's really still foreign money, but it's here already. Or two, it wasn't that big of a thing to begin with. It was a big deal, but there are many other places you can park your money if you're a foreign investor, like commercial real estate. The foreign buyer's tax does not apply to commercial real estate here. So the idea of implementing this 2-year foreign buyer ban, I think it's just politics. I don't know if it's necessarily going to change anything, because the idea of foreign investment in Vancouver is just like, that's 7% holding. That's a 20% purchase tax. What else does Canada have to do, or BC have to do, to say, stop parking your money here?
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, so in Toronto, we do not have that foreign tax, which is, pardon me, the vacancy tax. There was a foreign buyer's tax that was implemented, quite similarly, started at 15, up to 20. And then, as you just noted, there was this 2 years temporary ban from foreign buyers. You're right. I think that doesn't really affect things very much. I think there was a similar study, and it was sub 3% that were actually foreign buyers by the definition thereof. I think perhaps there's a lot of loopholes there, people that are, buying through a cousin or a family member or a friend that are already here. And of course, it's always worth it when you see that it's, $300,000 worth. So definitely there's motivation to try and find loopholes. So very, very interesting to talk about that. But have you felt the effects of foreign buyers sort of coming back? Because you said that was 6 months. So since then, where have things been?
I think that there's a lot, to your point, the loopholes and what those are. I mean, permanent residency status, there's a lot of money from, foreign money. Let's just call a spade a spade. When we say that, we mean traditionally from China, where either the son or the wife, I'm saying this traditionally, have their permanent residency status. So, we did a deal 3 years ago of a north of $10 million house. And the money was foreign money, but one of the spouses was a Canadian citizen, and it wasn't charged vacancy, or wasn't charged the foreign buyer's tax, because she's not a foreigner.
Yeah, there were exemptions. Sorry, I cut you off there. There were exemptions, and it was if somebody was studying, or if somebody was working here, or if somebody had their PR. And they basically got rid of the first two, the studying and the working here, which I think really will crack down on that quite a bit. We
didn't have those loopholes. Studying, working. Apparently, you could get some special exemption if you were getting a skilled worker permit, something like that. But it was really hard to get. But this new foreign buyer ban, this is what'll be interesting to see how this gets rolled out for 2 years, is that it said like students are exempt, whereby currently in BC, they're not. It's like a student can buy a condo here, but under the new ban, they can.
Interesting.
Which one will supersede the, I don't know. It'll be interesting. It's like this whole, they're rolling out a blind, or they're getting rid of blind bidding. Are you guys dealing with that as well?
It's been discussed. It hasn't officially happened. I think that what they've stated here is that the seller will have the option, because basically what you're then saying is that it needs to be an auction, right?
So they just rolled out that like there is going to be a basically like kind of a rescission period, just like you have on new property,
Right.
brand construction. They haven't described at all how that's going to work. Like a half a point, you know, if you tie something up for $1 million, maybe if you back out, you have to put up half a point as a penalty for that. So you don't just go up and tie up a bunch of property at once.
Mm-hmm.
But this removing a blind bidding thing, they just rolled out an email the other day where it kind of explained the system, like the company that we're going to be using, the program to like log what's coming in.
Sure.
But then again, no information as to how this quote unquote not auction system is going to work. If you can clearly see what the other buyer is, then they're minimum threshold. Otherwise, I just did a deal the other day for in the 675 range, so entry level condo, and there was 2 buyers and they were going back and forth, and yeah, it just happened that their offers blind were going up by basically $1,000 increments until the seller said, "That's it, last call, one more go. What's your last offer?" And then someone came up 5 or 10 grand, and then they won it. But it'll be interesting to see how this. So, you know, what would be the increment of which you can outbid someone?
A study that I had shared with me when this was being talked about happening in Toronto was basically that this blind bidding system actually is beneficial to buyers, even though buyers don't like it. What ends up happening is what you just said, right? So you might go up in $1,000 or $5,000 increments, depending on sort of price point. And eventually it's like, well, if I'm only putting in, you know, another, you know, percentage point into this, of course, it's not going to really break the bank. A little more. And then it's just, you're, you know, one hand is feeding the other because this one keeps going higher, so do you. And so you just don't want to lose it. It's emotional. And so the decision to lose it actually makes it a lot harder versus being told, I'm sorry, the other person went all in for it and their number was greater than yours. You also mentioned something there too. So the rescission period, maybe not everybody knows, but with purchasing new property, you have 10 days basically to walk away from an existing deal, what we call here a cooling off period. But
interesting. Ours is 7. It's weird that yours is 10 and ours is 7.
Isn't that? Yeah, I don't know. In Australia, where they have this bidding system, what I'm told is that even once a deal is struck, the property still remains available. So basically, if somebody else comes in and offers more for that property still remains available. So now you're basically caught with a situation where the buyer has the ability to back out. The big question, I think, will be, is the seller able to sell the property again to the actual highest bidder during this rescission period? It'll be very interesting to see what happens and whom these rules will favor.
I hope there's going to be some ability for sellers in the remark of having, especially if you're selling dirt, like just land value homes. I mean, that's just a developer buying that, right? So if the penalty isn't high enough, there's nothing stopping a developer in a heated market to tie up 3, 4, or 5 properties at once in, let's say, their rescission period time, and then just remove subjects on the one that they want.
Well, that's it. I mean, we have conditions and things for these reasons too. So.
Well, and I will say, I think an easier system, because of course everyone else's opinion is better than the government. So of course you're going to hear mine. If they just had a minimum amount of days from being active on MLS to when you can look at, a mandatory minimum threshold period of, let's say, 5 days. Go to market on a Wednesday, you cannot look at an offer until Monday. Then that would allow everybody who is interested, who wants to write a clean offer, to do their inspections, to read all of the documentation, to get inspectors in there if you want, and also planning and everything. It allows you to do the due diligence that you want to do, which is apparently what this legislation was designed to do, protect consumers so they can have more time. We'll just make it, now they're listing.
It's attractive in many ways. I see a lot of pros there. I mean, of course, it still leaves a big open-ended question of, are you not able to just sell it to somebody? You know, like if someone backs away from that number, like it's a very.
I'd rather that than a mandatory rescission period of 7 days.
Absolutely agree.
There have been a lot of places that have been listed on a Friday, open house Saturday, Sunday, offers on Monday. So if you go see it on a Saturday open, how are you going to get an inspection on a Sunday with 24 hours notice in a heated market?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That
to tell you, I think that in my 11, pardon me, maybe it's 12 years now in the business, I think I've probably sold at least a property a year on average on day 0. So effectively it goes on MLS, and at midnight it becomes day 1 the next day. And so that first, breath of fresh air, it's listed, and then we'll hop on the phone, message the client, let's go see this one. It looks great. We've already prepped. We've, done all the due diligence. We've done, financing. We've prepared for all the things you need to prepare for. So we just come in sort of guns a-blazing and buy it, because the next one's going to be more expensive, unfortunately. Very interesting. We'll be watching for sure to see what happens in the Vancouver area. Anyways, it's been so nice to connect with you and hear what's happening with you.
You as well. As
happy
always.
birthday again. Thank you for taking some time with me, and wish you all the best, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lani. It's lovely chatting, sir. Bye for now.
Okay. Talk soon. Thank you.